السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مساء الخير جميعا. أهلا بكم في برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد الموسم السابع. معنا اليوم ضيف مميز وضيف صعب صراحة، راح أتعب معاه كثير في هذا البرنامج، لأنه قعدنا تقريبا ربع ساعة نتناقش كيف بيكون شكل البرنامج. طبعا ضيفنا اليوم جيفري كارتر من نيوكاسل. طبعا هو يشتغل في علم الآثار، مشجع طبعا قوي لنيوكاسل، كوميدي، يعني يعمل في الأمور الترفيهية والكوميدية، وأيضا عازف للجيتار. ويمكن اليوم hopefully Mr. Jeff will maybe sing something for me as it's my birthday today. I'm turning 39. Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. عيد ميلادي اليوم طبعا 39 سنة. يمكن يغني لنا جيف أغنية لا تزال لاسس Welcome to Newcastle with وليد show season 7 with special guest. I may not able to have a little control on the show, but we agree on terms, personal terms agreed. Jeffrey Carter, welcome Jeffrey.
I'll say up front, everyone concerned, we've agreed to be respectful, and which is why I've decided to take you on a strange journey. I would like to talk about various things, including comedy and my performance and things like that. Aloyd and I know each other through Newcastle. NUFC Matters is the channel that we work for, and that is also the reason we do it is to raise money for Alzheimer's. That's our project, and everyone gives their time, and I do maybe 15 minutes on a Monday night, and I do the entertainment. And it's a very difficult thing to judge. You've got to get the pitch right, because you do not want to undermine anybody. And which is why I like this particular show. It gives me a chance to just talk without having to watch all the faces of all the people on the show to make sure I'm pitching it right. Because I'm there to be a bit of entertainment, a bit of lightness at the end. Because unfortunately, at the moment, for example, when there's no football, people just get sort of depressed. And you go, no. What we do is we go and watch cricket, right? We go and do the racing, the tennis, there's the golf. There's all sorts of exciting things that we could be doing other than worrying about the football. And in the city, they used to say, sell in May and go away. And in the Fleet Street, the press used to call it the silly season. Because it all gets very, very strange. So, sorry about that, bit of a cough. Cough and you'll deafen thousands. That's an old saying in the BBC. A lot of what I'm doing when I'm online and doing comedy, and generally in comedy, and what you're doing is misdirection. You're getting them to sort of look over here, look at something shiny, and really you're doing something else. And sorry, that was me kicking the props. I'm surrounded by China, which is an extremely dangerous thing to be surrounded by. And it's like any art. It's about creating a bit of a mystery, and misdirection is the key to comedy, right? You get people thinking one thing and you take them somewhere else. And that little journey of moving from where they expected to be to where they end up is the funny bit, right? It's the bit they enjoy. But like all of these things, you have to have put the work in. And it's a problem with our digital age now, is that it's all got very easy to do things. I can sit in my flat and produce broadcast quality music with virtually no experience at all. And I can do the same thing with visual imagery and documentaries, and some of the stuff that's being produced is absolutely diabolical. And the curious thing is, I used to try and report it to YouTube and say, this is madness. You can't do this. And they would go, yes, that's terrible, and do nothing about it whatsoever, right? So on the YouTube side of it over here, there is, information has gone mad. And I'm going to tell you my favorite little story, which links archaeology into this. Now, as we all know, the Romans had hobnail boots. So there's a guy chatting away about hobnail boots and the Romans marching on roads. And up appears a picture of a hobnail boot. Very good. And then a picture of an army boot with hobnails in it, a 1940s army boot. And then something like that appeared. And I don't know if you can see that. That's American Depression glass of the 1920s in a pattern called hobnail. Right? That's AI for you. It came up with that image. And I'm very lucky that I actually know that piece of information, because other people would be going, what on earth's that about? And you see it. And horrible things are how the pyramids were built. And there's these huge giants building things. Right? And they get millions of views and going, wow, yes, that's exactly how I thought it should be. And it's all rather strange. So, where should we start? One of the questions that came up the other day, which I thought that came up on our show, that I really wanted to jump up and down and ask people questions, because they make these statements. And a lot of what they're doing is what we call projection, right? You're putting your ideas and your feelings onto other people, right?
Influencer?
Well, a bit like an influencer, but it's more like what a child does, right?
Okay.
When there's a strange smell in the room, he did it. It's not me, right? She did it.
Yes.
It's projecting, pretending.
Projecting,
yes. Yes. And what they're doing is projecting their feelings as a fan onto the players or onto the club or onto other things, which they don't work that way, right? And that's another great theme of mine, is that players are human beings with a career, right? They've done their 10,000 hours, which is the key figure. We keep coming back to this. I've done 10,000 hours as a musician, right? I can play bass. I've done 10,000 hours. I can play guitar. Done 10,000 hours. Do a bit of singing. Yeah, maybe. Don't ask me how to play piano or drums, right? Both of which I'd attempt, but right? I haven't done the 10,000 hours, and I have respect. And just occasionally, you come across people who are not self-aware enough to realize they're not any good. My favorite story, I do a lot of stuff for charity. That's a lot of work that musicians sort of do. If I'm too busy doing something else, well, we'll do a charity gig. We'll play a few standards. And a friend of mine I invited along, and he turned up with this huge, great bass rig, played bass, put on some headphones, right? He said, it's going to be awfully loud. Put on some headphones and started playing. And we couldn't hear ourselves think, right? And at one point, he was playing at twice the speed the rest of us were playing, right? It was just, and about a few years later, I was talking to somebody about setting up a folk night. Let's set up a folk night at the local pub. And one of the guys just looked at me and said, no, who will turn up? And it was the same bloke. He knew this guy, so and so will turn up. Oh no. No self-awareness, right? It's terrible. Right, question. You should know this question, the answer to this question. How many people do the club employ? To the nearest 100.
In 10 years?
100. How many people do you think the club employed to the nearest 100? Including staff, training staff, people selling tickets.
In 100 years?
No, in terms of 100, how many people, employees, do you think the club has at the moment? Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit.
Okay. Well,
have a guess.
A guess?
Yeah.
Like 100 total?
800.
800.
Yeah, our club employs 800. Well,
But this is after Mike Ashley era.
If we get about a dozen new players in, it'll be then.
After Mike Ashley era, or
no, now at this precise moment. Yeah, at this precise moment now. Yeah.
But what can I ask you? What number were when Mike Ashley was running the club?
I have no idea. I can't remember.
Only Charlie only.
It was probably considerably less. Now, one of the things that we have to thank Mike Ashley for. Now, when he first took over the club, everyone was very excited, and he was very excited because he thought he was going to be part of the gang, and he wore that shirt and appeared in the club and bought everyone beers, and it looked like, oh, this is, and it was such a change from the previous ownership. And he seemed to be wanting to spend money, and then it all went rather sour, right, rather quickly. But people forget that initially we were all very positive about it, and also that he left the club with no debt, which is a really important thing, because one of the great things that happened in football was the arrival of the Americans and the Glazers buying Manchester United, because they borrowed the money against the value of the club. Manchester United was always the top club because it had a surplus. You know, it sold more shirts, it sold more tickets, its players were worth more money. So they had a surplus of money, and that kept them at the top. Then the Glazers came along and said, oh, this is rather neat. And they borrowed the money to buy the club, and then just paid off they just pay off the interest and live off the profit. So Manchester United was doomed because they're more highly geared, as we say, than an F1 racing car, right? It's like borrowing money against your property. It's only worth so much. And it started a trend of which football became really about money. And what is so exciting about the club at the moment and the whole project is that it's not a problem, if you know what I mean. The money is real. It doesn't have to be borrowed. It isn't dependent on the value of a cryptocurrency or some strange madness like that. And that's a tremendous thing to do. And to be honest, it's a privilege to be part of such an ambitious project. So, getting back to our friends, I'm going to go back in history now. Right? How far back should we go? Let's go back to the Romans, shall we? Yes. Yeah.
As long as you promise me, we'll talk about Newcastle later.
Yes. Well, the Romans turned up at Newcastle, okay, and they built a bridge. And good grief, I've not actually got one. I did. I've got a bridge. They built a bridge, and when a very famous person called Armstrong, who was one of the great industrial pioneers on Tyneside, very important figure, they built the swing bridge, and they dug up the old Roman bridge, and there were two altars, and one of the altars has a dolphin on it, and it's actually the figure is Oceanus, and on our badge on the Newcastle crest there are two strange dolphiny creatures. That's Oceanus. There you go. And I'm going to tell you another very strange story. In the south of the river, there was a fort called Arbea, right? A Roman fort called Arbea. And strange enough, I used to work there, as that's where the archaeology, the museum service is based. I worked for the museum services for a while. That's another story. And so our local jargon, our local expression for people who live south of the river, live in South Shields, we call them sand dancers. Okay. Now, Sundancers is also a slightly pejorative term that you might use about Arabs or anybody who lives in a sandy area. But what's very interesting is that the Roman fort on Arbea was staffed, was garrisoned by Arab sailors. Right? They'd come. What the Romans would do is they would recruit troops in one of their areas and move them to another area where they would garrison. They wouldn't keep their own troops in, their own country. So Arbea, which is still the joke about sand dancers is made, that joke goes all the way back to the Roman period. That refers to the fact that these guys who manned our fort came from your part of the world, right? And they're so a lot of those people who are living in South Shields, have always lived in South Shields, are descendants of Arabs, right? Which is an interesting thought. And that's a deep connection between us. And going back to your trading thing in the Silk Route and all these trading ideas, where do we go from there? Tell you what, let's talk about Mackham, shall we? While we're here, let's have a little word about the Mackhams.
Mackhams, Sunderland. Okay.
Our friends in Sunderland, okay, who are very far away, but are definitely very different from us. Now, the origin story for Geordies, where the word of Geordies comes from, and why we are Geordies, and what makes us special, right? Is that we were loyal to the King George.
Yes.
Right? And that's the story we're sticking to. Anything else, right? And that lot weren't. Right? that lot we don't like because they weren't loyal to the King. However, there's a deeper resentment in that for years the centre of shipbuilding was Sunderland because ships were made out of wood, and they had the best wood and they built the best ships, and we really didn't have a look in. Right? We had probably buy our ships from Sunderland. Then some clever people came up with the idea of steam power and coal and railways and all the Industrial Revolution thing went. And we had coal, iron ore, we had stuff for making ceramics with, we had all sorts of chemicals in the rocks, and we had everything we wanted. And Sunderland gradually lost their place, and we took over. So that's another cause of a long-term rivalry. And I will show you some Sunderland ceramics later on. I'm now going to talk about Orientalism, right? A few hundred years ago, through the trade of the Silk Route and things started to appear, which we know as willow pattern, right? This is willow pattern. You can probably see it there. Whoops, there we go.
Chinese or
yes, it's a Chinese idea, willow pattern. This is actually made by mailing in England in the late 18th century. It's got CTM on there, CTM mailing, which was our main manufacturer of pottery down in Tyneside. And for years, there were two things that we couldn't work out how they did it, right? One was make porcelain. Now, if you didn't know, the difference between porcelain and pottery, which we could make, is that it's translucent. I can see my hand through it, if you know what I mean. It's translucent. You can see through it. And that's the difference. And how did they do that, right? And there was a lot of chemistry went on to try and perfect it. And various famous people whose names you've probably heard of, like Spode and Wedgwood, Wedgwood's still quite a famous name, developed various processes and involving all sorts of chemicals to try and create this china. And they used ground up bone, which is why it was known as bone china, strangely enough. And this, strangely enough, is another attempt at reproducing the willow pattern, right? And everyone had their different takes on it. They've all got different details in the trees and in the, and there are whole different styles of it. But this is made in Baker, as in Baker Grove, right? This is very rare, actually. That's actually made by
Baker in Newcastle.
Baker in Newcastle, yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah, you've been there. This was made about 1780, 90. No, I'm lying. No, in the early 1800s. Sorry, early 1800s. I'll get my head around that. I haven't done the homework for that. And so that's willow pattern, and everybody tried to make this stuff. This is very early willow pattern, made actually in the 1700s, right? And it's not translucent, right? And they're desperately trying. They've even got faux Chinese marks on the back. There's a little squiggly mark to make it look like Chinese. They had no idea what it was, if you know what I mean. And it's the same with the pattern, they didn't understand it. And all this stuff is reproduced in all sorts of wares, right down to, can you guess what that is? Doll's house furniture. Right. That's for your children's dollies, right? Made in.
But Geoff, why are you interested in this? Is it as a history and products from Newcastle, or what exactly?
As part of our industrial heritage, as part of our industrial archaeology.
Yeah, because I see you in the show with Steve. You promote some Newcastle plates. So
yes. Well, that's it. Which comes to an. I'll take you on another little journey that links these things together, and that is the railways. Okay, so we were big on the railways. Okay, as you all know, you've all heard of George Stephenson and inventing the kettle and all that sort of thing. And at the same time, you had the Industrial Revolution going on. And what started to happen was you'd have holiday weeks, right? Everyone in Carlisle would go on holiday at the same time. And everyone in Newcastle would go on a holiday, same 2 weeks, a different time of the year. And it was known as Race Week, or it would have a particular name. And they'd go off on holiday on the railways and go and stay and bring back souvenirs from their time there. And so a whole souvenir industry grew up. The whole concept of souvenirs grew up. There always has been souvenirs. They were more like sort of pilgrim tokens. You'd go to Canterbury or some other famous religious site and bring back some token that you'd done this good thing. So I want to show you some of these. Here we go. Can you see that? There is the arms of Newcastle. And there's our little dolphiny friends. And that was made by a company called Goss. And that is top of the range stuff. And you'd go and buy and bring that back.
For sugar or?
This souvenir. Now, sorry, I'm sitting on the mic here. Now, for example, for the more modest pocket, this is a bath. Tin bath, the sort of bath that miners used to have in front of the fire, right? So that would be a sort of more modest sort of thing you might bring back. All of this was going on right through the First World War, so you might bring back a battleship. Right? Here we have a little battleship, and it's got its little crest of arms here, and reproductions of things in museums. And they all get mixed up. So you can buy ridiculous things like a lighthouse from, the middle of the country somewhere, right? But it's just, it all gets all strangely mixed up. And we start to get all sorts of souvenirs, rather like the ones I was showing Steve the other day. So there is that connection with tourism and the railways and the production of souvenir ceramics. And of course, everybody else gets into the act, and we get souvenirs turning up. I'm going to show you this. This is a fascinating thing. I'm not going to really comment on the context, but you can see this figure here, sat here reading a book, and he's got his pen his quill in a pot.
It's like a Chinese master, or
it's certainly what I would call an arabesque figure, right? Quite. I mean, we started to use words, and the difficult words like Persian to describe certain types of art, to avoid certain things, right? So that's the whole tourism industry, and as I say, foreign countries started to get in. So I've got quite a lot of souvenirs. I haven't got any here, which were made abroad, right? And of inferior quality. There's something to suit everyone's pocket, shall we say? And this, what have I got here? This is one from Tynemouth, for example, which has got the coat of arms, and it's got a little ship on it and a couple of sailors, and it's a model of a vase found near Swindon, right? Of all places. So again, it's sort of mixed up ideas all together, but reflecting nautical traditions and all that sort of thing. Now, I want to make another point about light, as I had a little light, as in what we can do with light. When I want you to look at, you see this plate here, which is a typical plate made in the Victorian period, and it's all hand colored. People sat there in dimly lit places and hand colored all this stuff with brushes, usually over a printed pattern. By this stage, we had printed patterns. And the point about this, it looks really good in candlelight. Okay. And occasionally you have to think about art in terms and interior decoration in terms of the light that it was designed for. Right.
Yeah, regarding your background, it's kind of, as you said, arabesque or design.
Mm. This is Indian hand printed. I like hand printed fabrics, where you literally get wooden blocks and color them and stamp them in different colors, and you wash it all and you stamp it all again and dry it all. And I've got, throughout my house, I have fabrics, and including, and we can go back to misdirection again. What I used to do, and this comes back to stagecraft, I used to appear against a green background, right? Which people would have thought can't be green screen, and it wasn't. It was back projected. What you do is you have a screen behind you, and the projector behind the screen, it projects it a reverse image onto the behind you. Right? So occasionally, when I would interact with people, and for a joke, I would suddenly, my background would change, and I did it to our friends on another channel, and reproduced their background. I mean, it'd be like you sitting there, and I suddenly behind me, which is what I could do if I put my mind to it, is reproduce what was behind you there, right? Mm-hmm. And it would be all very strange. And you've seen me do tricks with the camera, turning the image upside down and things like that, which I can do. I haven't done that yet, but you know, there is. I can just suddenly go upside down, and what would be good is when your hat falls off, right? But I couldn't arrange that to happen.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. Roller coaster we are living now with the Newcastle, and upside down is.
Yes,
pretty much.
The world is upside down. So, and we've got this little idea about blue and white patterns, and what we call these ideas and how they spread. And I wanted to talk about briefly about other things. For example, one artifact that we forget about is wood, right? And as we said, ships were built out of wood, but all of these shipbuilding communities and engineering communities fitted out ships. So they actually produced locally. They would have had cabinet makers and furniture makers to do the interiors of ships. So there's this huge tradition of decorative woodwork associated with shipbuilding. And of course, the ceramics. Everybody ate off ceramics. So there'll be that. There'll be leather industries and a rope. Right? Just, the huge amount of rope that was needed. And, somebody has to tar all that. So all of these things. And I'm going to show you some glass here. This is the sort of glass that we turned out in the Depression era, and it's pre-molded, stamped. You can see there's a big dividing line down the middle of it, and it's pressed glass, and it's very unlikely you're going to put your name on it even, but our local factories knocked this sort of stuff out as an
we use it for a sweet providing or some dates we use some kind of similar one.
At the same time, this is in the Depression, the 1920s. The Americans are turning out Depression glass, which is fabulously interesting stuff. We mentioned this hobnail pattern earlier, but they have all sorts of interesting colors and tints, and it's shiny stuff that's very decorative and highly collectible these days. Again, made for a more mass market, but not particularly well-off mass market. And just by contrast, I'll show you this. This is proper Venetian glass. This is handmade Murano glass. And you can see it's got twisted detail, handle's been done. Again, this is somebody who has spent serious time learning an art and craft like this. And what I study in many ways is the history of tourism. People bring these things back. People started bringing things back from the Grand Tour. The Romans brought things back, right? The Egyptians brought things back. And on top of that, at the higher level, we've got diplomatic gifting going on all the time, right? And we would exchange not just objects, but the craftsman responsible, if you know what I mean. I'll send you my best painter, my best plasterer, the guy who can do your ceiling. And that sort of thing went on as a diplomatic trade all the time, just as, we were marrying each other's daughters and doing all sorts of other things in order to facilitate our broader culture. And this trading network, because trade is and value is what people are prepared to pay for, and trade is fundamental to the way we work.
Have you noticed, Geoff, some kind of trade increasing after the takeover for Newcastle? Have you seen some companies and more trade between Saudi and Newcastle and the UK?
Well, there is, I think, because there has been. There's been more to do. Obviously, you're providing more facilities for us to visit. You're hosting more events, and that's the key thing. I'm not going to deconstruct your plan, but you have to. You're going to have to offer a package, and this is what traditional entertainment does. If you go to Blackpool in Newcastle, traditionally, and you get your souvenirs, right? there are things for the children to do, there are things for the mummies to do, and there's things for the daddies to do, right? And there's things for the whole family to do. So you create a package, okay? And that's what's interesting about what's going on at the moment, is you're putting together packages that are going to be attractive, because sports and leisure is a very interesting business, and always has been. Right? This is sort of what I'm trying to say. And I'm now going to just digress back to colours and that. So this is a beautiful piece of glass. Again, that's a bit of art glass, moulded art glass. That's cobalt blue.
Cobalt.
Which is very cobalt blue, made with cobalt. Now, all of these guys, as I say, this is chemistry gone mad. This is alchemy. And that's another thing that people forget, is that alchemy, the ideas of fire and earth and water and whatever, is science. It was their version of science. Okay, this is where our science comes from. Newton and people like that were interested in alchemy. So I'm going to quick digress to our friends the Japanese, because we mentioned the Chinese. This is Japanese imari style, and you can get the sort of same sort of feel of the color palette with the blues and the reds, and you've seen that somewhere before, that sort of feel.
No, actually, first time.
This, strangely enough, is Japanese porcelain from a company called Noritake, which is a very important company. And these look like dragons. This is the first piece of pottery, ceramic I ever found, and I went, "What on earth is that?" I couldn't. It was strange. And these are actually phoenix birds. Which brings us briefly, I'm just going to throw a bit of, we've been talking about things, I'm going to throw a dragon at you. there's a thing that gets played with this, dragons. So this is our friend Wedgwood's attempt at
Korean.
This is our friend Wedgwood. There we are. And you can see all of those elements. You've got the blues, the reds, that color palette. You've got the decorative borders, little touches of green. And all of that is borrowed from various art forms throughout the East. Now, I'm going to show you something which will sort of be familiar. This is one of my pottery vases. I bought this in Blythe, where Dan Byrne comes from. I bought this in Blythe when I was on holiday, right? And it's the only bit I've got left. My children and the dog and everything else has smashed the rest of it. And you can see this sort of flowery figure here. Now, this is the same sort of flowery figure, and this is actually Japanese. This is the same sort of flowery figure, and this is made in Taiwan, and it's very definitely made in Taiwan, not China. For the people who use this China, it's very important that that's made in Taiwan. And this is made in, I believe, Sri Lanka, right? Which has got quite a. I've got stuff which is also, I could show you stuff that's made in Vietnam, another important site. Now, I'll just show you this. On the subject of Japanese, this is, again, Japanese style gold. Gone gold mad. And there you've got little figures, Japanese figures sitting around doing things. Now, rather curiously, okay, I'm going to show you this. Okay, this is another bit of porcelain. It's not actually from the Northeast. This is somebody else's porcelain. It's called Canton, right? and it's again Chinese figures doing strange things that we don't really understand, but you know, in a garden of, again, with these same sort of elements of the tree and the birds and things like that, sort of rearranged in a random manner. Because we were very, there's also a thing that people have of craft guilds, very important. Okay, keeping your secrets, and your craftsman will do it. How do you do this? Well, I'm not going to tell you. That's my 10,000 hours. I learned how to do this, and I'm not going to show you. And for example, we've always been fascinated by this. You've seen this stuff, rice grain porcelainage. It's quite common sort of stuff you see. It's got that rice grain pattern, and I'm going to ting it for you. Right. This is pre-revolutionary China. This stuff is genuinely thin. And I've got stuff that's even thinner than this. It's quite extraordinary, right? And because quality mattered, right? Quality was all, you know, that was, you were judged by the quality of your goods, your craft. Once you start working in a factory and you're on shift, and you know, it's less interesting. So again, social history. Did I show you the Sunderland jug? What Sunderland was famous for, incidentally, to be fair, we have to be fair to our friends at Sunderland. Was copper luster. Okay.
The pigeon, I think.
Yeah,
the eagle,
they were very big in making very shiny copper luster. You dip this in a copper compound, and you'd put wax on the areas you didn't want to show up. All right. And you could put patterns in there. And this has just got a base blue and a bit of Sunderland copper. And I want to show you a couple of my favorite bits of mailing before we finish talking about mailing. So this is mailing chinoiserie. Right, you can see the temple scenes and the flowers and all.
It's like book story cover.
Yeah, and you can see very shiny. That's cobalt blue we were talking about before. I picked this one out because it's actually made with cobalt blue. And what you do is they literally tube lined, it's called, the design with onto the surface of the ceramic, and then painted the enamel on in between. That's called tube lining. And what they were big at is Art Deco. They were what we call Art Deco. And you can see with the pinks and this was very popular in the 1930s, Art Deco. And it's come back. And mailing was a leading Art Deco style. They were quite big in Art Deco. And is there anything else to show you? Yeah, and it gets back to what everybody had. Everybody, for example, had a dressing table set. Men would have a dressing set with a shaving set with all the various bits and clobber you need for shaving, or attending to your studs, or whatever it was. All the stuff would be laid out, and you would have it in silver, right? Or you could have it in electroplated nickel silver, EPNS, or you could have it in glass or ceramic, china, or pottery. And this is mailing pottery of somebody's little candle that it would have, candle holder. Okay. And this is possibly one of my favorite bits, actually. This is a very nice mailing ashtray, right? Nice pottery ashtray. And it's got the back made by mailing, and there'll be a little design mark on the back. And again, one of the things that went wrong when we deindustrialize, I'm sort of missing out Margaret Thatcher and the deindustrialization of the north of England. We lost a lot of information. A lot of these factories closed down fairly abruptly, and they didn't keep the records of all the designs and it was the same with the shipyards and the builders. The builders always had models, beautiful models of all the ships they made, and models of their engines. And a lot of that stuff just got lost and was not kept. And we should have museums full of it. Now, just some other materials while we're on. Cloisonne, where you
Italian?
Cloisonne.
Yeah, sounds Italian.
Yes, it is possibly, or French. Don't ask me. I'm dyslexic. Where you put wire on. This is actually copper, and you can see China written on the back. And you put copper in there, and then you put powdered enamel and heat it up, and polish it up, and that's cloisonne. It's quite a nice technique. And I'm going to get this to shine nicely. That is made in paper mache. Right. Another interesting material. That's again another ancient technique, particularly associated with China, was making things out of paper mache. Because down now, right? Right now, are you ready for a quiz? I'm going to show you some stuff, and I'll just give you an idea. Where do you think this comes from? Have a guess.
Which country you mean?
Yeah, which country? Pick a country. Pick a country, any country.
Yeah, Thailand.
No. This was made by Pascal Zorrilla in Spain. Right?
Spain.
In Spain. It's Spanish. Right? And that was a guy that I discovered called Pascal Zorrilla. Have a guess.
From the colors, it's very hard, really. Maybe England.
No, it's Turkey, North Africa.
Turkey,
possibly North Africa. It's not actually marked. I think it's probably it's somewhere North Africa, possibly or possibly Turkey. Right, that's fairly simple. That's fairly simple. Now, how about that, Joanna?
Japan.
Yeah, isn't that gorgeous? No, this was made. This is actually called. I can't remember what it's called now. Indian something.
Yeah, but Japanese.
It's made in England.
In England.
I've just started clicking. This is a beautiful pattern. It's lovely blues, and it's got that same sort of figure in it that we've just been looking at, right? Personal collection.
Wow.
This
is Turkey. This is Turkey.
Turkey, yeah. Spot on. That is Turkey. That's classic Turkish pottery. Now, here we are. Where do you think that comes from? Now, this is your tester.
China.
China. No, this is British. It's English. It's our attempt at copying the Chinese. And I'll show you my favorite plate, just out of interest. Right, there you go.
Wow. Yeah. I think I saw it before, this one.
So where do you think it comes from? Did I tell you?
Germany, Austria.
It comes from Rhodes. And what's nice about it, it combines...
What is Rhodes?
Rhodes, Ireland, in the Eastern Mediterranean. RHODS.
Ireland.
But it's in the Mediterranean. It's near Greece. It's basically a Greek style. It's very like it's interestingly. It's very really amazing. They have very similar patterns in the late Bronze Age, and again, it's brought back by tourists. They bring it back, right? And I keep finding this stuff. I buy this stuff in England. I don't have to go to Greece for it. I don't have to because the tourists bring it back. Everything in my collection, bar a few things which I bought recently, which are specialist, I find in charity shops, right? Because
I believe
this is the history of people's tourism. It goes back to bringing something back, hanging out.
You would be like you would be like Morocco. They have a lot of ceramic stuff.
Yeah, Morocco again. I was going to show you something on what I made. What I made. This, it's an interesting idea. You can get decals, stick-on things, right, which will fit on your tile wall or other surface in any pattern you like, right? Have I got any here? Yeah, this is again, this is what's called arts and crafts, and you can see that was done by the person who designed the House of Parliament in London, right? Quite a famous architect and designer, and it's part of the arts and crafts movement. And you can get, this is ceramic, right? This is a coaster, rather classy toaster. But you can get that as a stick-on. You can stick that onto your existing tile and make it look like that, which is a very nice, cheap alternative and a way of tarting little corners up. I use it all over the places. As I say, I made that by sticking it to a vinyl tile and got some stick-on stuff at the back. I don't know if you can hear that. We've got chainsawing out the back now. living in the countryside.
Okay.
Right, and I see something equally. What do you make of that? You see this pattern here?
Yeah, but what's this actually? Vase or what?
It's for chopping up a psychoactive substance, which people in Papua New Guinea would snort up their nose. Right? This is a bit of Papua New Guinea. I thought I'd throw that in. There's a bit of Oceania. It's one of the few places we haven't mentioned is Oceania.
Yeah, but what did you use for?
It's literally used for chopping up some sort of root.
Oh, okay.
This is an animal bone.
Yeah, but this is Africa, of course, right?
New Guinea, north of Australia.
New Guinea, North Australia.
Yeah. I was going to say Oceania. I'm way away from the microphone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a friend. I have a friend, Andrew. He just came from there.
Yeah.
Andrew.
And interestingly enough, Papua New Guinea is a good place in point because of its geography. Every little culture does its own thing, and they have their own style of architecture, their own style of pottery, their own languages, in a sense, because they form isolated communities, and it's not quite as susceptible to the sort of open ideas that you get in Eurasia, where you've got that sort of big open space where people can trade across. There isn't those physical barriers. Whereas some of these highly dense jungle countries with difficult terrain, you don't get that spread of ideas, and you get more isolated things going on. We'll start talking about the Scottish. So that, more or less, my little tour of ceramics and Northeast industry, and because we're a sailing nation, a seafaring nation, we have a lot in common.
Jeff, that was really amazing, and first time I saw this, really, I've been in Newcastle, but for me, it's very interesting, very attracting, but for me, I didn't think much about the ceramic and the plates much. It's not like a hobby for me, but I believe a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
and to be honest, this is a collection from the world, right?
Yeah, this is stuff that I've collected. What I used to do is buy the stuff and sell it all over the world. I used to export it all over the world.
Wow. Okay.
Every so often I'd be panicking, thinking, "Oh God, I haven't sold anything," and it was usually Italian ladies, strangely enough, even Russian ladies, all sorts of people. It's usually women who just love beautiful things and would go, oh, I must have one of these, I must have that. Oh, I've seen that. I must have that. And being an archaeologist and being analytical, I quite got off on understanding the complexity of all the marks and the pattern numbers and all the stuff that goes on. And I have a big reference library of stuff. And then I started to move into glass, and it gets even stranger, the world of glass, because glass is very difficult to mark, right? Pottery, you can spray paint on it, but once you've got a piece of glass, it's difficult.
But do you think China factories they ruin this industry somehow?
That China,
the country, with the low price, low quality.
They've ruined a lot of industries. They've ruined a lot, and they've done what classically happens in economics, where you reduce the value of something, so everyone has to close their factories. And then you're the only one producing it. And that's the sort of thing that goes on. And we've done it to them, they've done it to us. We did some terrible things to them in terms of importing opium and doing strange things. We did some very odd trade practices. But by and large, to be honest, the British heritage is fairly positive throughout the world, I think. We've left some people with some very good railways. We've left some people with some quite good justice systems and quite good political systems. We've done all right. We, the British, were the ones, strangely enough, who made the big stand against slavery. It's much as it's easy to sort of say, oh well, the triangular slave trade and all that sort of stuff. But it was the British who used their navy and their resources to say, no, you're not going to do it. And they sat their people off the west coast of Africa and forced them to stop trading. And it was, we paid for it with our money. And as a country, I'm sort of proud of the only country that has ever probably gone to war on principle for someone else's freedom. Right? We piled in for the Polish in the war. I'm
not into that, but I watch Peaky Blinders all seasons, and I got some ideas. About how things work, and then it's a very interesting show. Maybe you didn't see it.
History works that way. History is what can I call it? A protection racket. It's a sort of a protection racket.
Projection, yes.
You look after that for us, and we'll make sure you're all right. Just send a little bit of gold our way. Send us a little bit of whatever, and we'll make sure you're all right, mate. And one of the curious things, going back to sailing and ships, and what's quite important, and this goes back to the Bronze Age again, is that if you're sailing somewhere and you don't know if you're going to have to fight these people or trade with them, you don't want slaves with you. You don't want people whose loyalty you might have to question, right? Which is why you get these sort of I can't even speak, I need a drink.
Democratic?
That's the chappy. Democratic. It's gone. My mind's gone. Concepts associated with sailing ships and people who sail, because you need to be able to pull together. And bringing it back in a sense to football, again, is that special bond of a team who have to work together and rely on each other. And that's miners as well. miners had to work in extreme conditions. They had to be very efficient at what they did, right? There's more, it's dangerous. The more time you spend down there, the more dangerous it was. And they had to rely absolutely on their mates. And rather like the football team, when I said how many people work for the club, right, there were way more people above the ground than below the ground, right? It takes a lot more people to process the coal and clean it and do all the other things that needed to go on and to maintain the equipment and all that. And it's the same thing with the playing. The idea of how many staff have we got? We've got a lot more staff than you'd think, doing all these interesting jobs. And in terms of my own interest and how I end up talking about engineering and mining, I set off in life wanted to be a mining engineer. The other thing that we've got up here, which you may have heard of, is the windsill. You know that big sheet of rock with a Roman wall on the top, where they recently cut down the famous tree. Now that is called windsill, and it is literally, absolutely, the hardest rock in Britain. If not in most of Europe. It is really, really hard. And when our prehistoric miners and people were doing stuff, they got this stone here. And one of the curious things that they did, okay, if you want to believe in slavery, they made stone axes out of it, right? And they drilled holes through the hardest rock, right? So you could put a shaft through. Do you know how they did that? Have a quick think. How would you drill a hole in the Stone Age through the hardest stone you've got? It's really, what they used
by the drill. We're hearing
a drill. Yeah, they used a bone drill, but they used sand, right? And of course, they all wore away. But they probably, it's a good argument, I think, for slavery. The guy who has to sit there and do that all day, right? Okay. He's not having a good day. He's not working to his full potential. And so the lengths people would go to produce artifacts, special artifacts that make you go, I've got one of these and you haven't. Right. Mine's made out of a rock that you haven't got. And there's a whole trade in elaborate objects that seem to have no particular purpose. Right. They'll be a very nasty, you get hit by one, but they have no particular purpose. Right? They are just beautiful objects. They are valuable. And I've got one.
Geoff, sorry to interrupt, but as the things you show me, which was great and interesting, you like sorry, pardon my English, you like this kind of famous stones, this like the women use it for jewelry.
Yes.
Is it related to something?
Yeah. Well, there is belief around stones, obviously. They all have their own folklore, a lot of which is probably put out there by people who sell stones. Right. This stone is very good for this. There's for example, there's a common belief that copper bracelets are good for arthritis. It's certainly something that people who make copper bracelets would tell you. So precious stones have always been of interest and traded great distances. It was a long time before we learned to cut them. Obviously, they were just a lump. A lump of something, and it took a while before we developed techniques to actually cut them to make faceted stones that you see today. And you can date diamonds and other cut artifacts by how they're cut, as to what technology has been used to cut them. And of course, now we can just make them by compressing carbon, and which is far more useful.
All right, Geoff, I know you didn't want to talk about football, but we have to.
No, we don't. Okay, let's talk about football.
Yeah. Finally, we receive a question here. It's general, but we go from there. What do you think of Eddie Howe this season? Should he stick with the same tactics or change?
Okay. The basic tactical model we use is, I think, high press. All right. And it's up to the other team who are trying to be clever and play out, because that's the fashionable thing to do, right? To beat our press. And they're not necessarily very good at it. Okay. And I do not think he will change those tactics. We do have more tactical flexibility than people realize. With people like Tonali, who is my favorite player, if you want to know what's going on, watch Tonali. There was a time when we were playing Leicester, and their striker, their well-known striker, whose name escapes me at the moment, and come to me in a second, is a great running, break the line and charge off and kick the ball in the back of the net. Tonali was always between the ball and the striker, right? Wherever you looked at it, you could see that he positioned himself so they could not pass that ball through, right? So if you want to understand the tactics that we use, watch Tonali, right? Because he's the ticking brain out there. He is an extraordinary player. And getting back to football, yes, he's my favorite player. You'd have to acknowledge people like Gascoigne and Beardsley as being two of our most talented players ever. I mean, Gascoigne was as near a genius as you could get, and Peter was just a master at reading a game. And he's still around. He's still good. He's still a good guy. So I do not think the tactics will change that much. The more players we have, the more options we have. But I don't think our basic game plan will change, because at the moment it's up to the opposition to work out what to do about us. Okay, and they might try cooking it long. You know, there are people, and if you watch the way we actually play, we mix it up. Sometimes we cook it long, right? Sometimes we go straight down the middle. Sometimes we knock it out to the wing. And that's the other beauty of it. We're mixing our tactics up. And speaking again as a football fan, and I recommend, by the way, you should try and get George on, right? If you want serious stuff about football, get George on, right? He also knows a great deal about the industrial history of our connections.
Who's Juju?
Sorry?
Who's Juju?
George, sorry.
George
from NUC Matters.
Okay.
Yes, George, naval architect George.
Okay.
Right. He would make a very good guess. So tactically, it's a lot more complex than people imagine, and it does to some extent depend who's fit. I do think we have the best midfield in the world. Okay, but those three guys are you put that combination of players is the best midfield in the world. I'm going to be optimistic and stick my
before
neck
the
out
show,
there.
Before the show, Jeff, you hear me? No?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, before the show, Craig Hope break that Newcastle interesting, and Joe McCain from Villa, the Scottish player. And he's 30 years old. And do you think Eddie Howe changing his mind regarding signing older players?
I will not comment on transfer speculation. Personally, I'll tell you a story myself. Okay, I do not want to know what our players are doing. It's not good business if the opposition know what you're doing. It's not how we do business, right? And football is a business, okay? And all the stuff that goes on is a business. The media is a business itself. It's trying to make money. And one of the things you'll notice is that any story about Newcastle will have a picture of Isaac on it. Right? It's a sort of, doesn't matter what the story's about. It can be about the colour of the boots, but Isaac is always there because that's the clickbait.
All right.
So
Okay. What you want to talk about Newcastle if you didn't want to talk about transfer?
About Newcastle, well, about the culture of the football club, in a sense, because unfortunately, I don't like talking about football. We've got no football to talk about, and I don't particularly want to talk about last season. I could go through the individual players, if you like, and tell you what I think of them. Would that be a compromise? Okay. We've already mentioned Isaac. In the good old days, he'd be playing in the reserves, right? You'd be going to play with the girls. You know? Go away, right? And until you got your attitude back, right? Anthony Elanga, very interested. You know, that's quite an interesting signing. We'll wait and see. And as I've already said, Sandro Tonali is my favourite player the best player that I've seen. And I have to premise that by the fact that we can now see these players. Back in the day, you couldn't, right? Unless you're at the match or they happened to get on match of the day. There was no sort of access apart from that. And I can remember quite an important part in my life when we got promoted under Kevin Keegan. I was in the south of England at the time, and Saturday, we were suddenly on match of the day. My wife said, "You never used to be interested in football." I said, "Well, I am now," because suddenly I can see what's going on. Otherwise, you hear on the radio, it's the pools. You actually predict what was happening. Right, Anthony Gordon. I think a lot of potential there, and I think that shows you the way the club works. We got Anthony Gordon. He wasn't fit enough, right? He wasn't quite right, and he didn't play until he was right. Okay, and the same with all of these things. Bruno, it's turned out to be a very good captain. Okay, I wasn't sure at first, but he's turned out okay. Right, that dynamic, that's the secret thing. That is the magic, is in that dressing room. That is the bit we have to preserve, and we're not allowed in there, and never want to know what's going on in that dressing room. Right, that is sacred space. Okay. Joe Linton, I've mentioned, part of the, he's fabulous. Absolutely great. Dan Burn. Well, what can you say about Dan Burn? Magical. He's been very good. He's exceeded everyone's expectation. And it's one of those art imitating life jobs. You couldn't make this stuff up. It's like, if you're writing a romantic story in some comic, it's that sort of thing. Harvey Barnes, yes, I'm quite impressed with Harvey Barnes. He's got a lot of potential. Tino Livramento, again, huge potential, absolutely huge potential. You've got to remember these people are at the beginning of their careers in many respects. Asula, again, great potential. Jacob Murphy, he keeps producing the goods. There's a lot of, among our community, there's a bit of anti-Murphy sentiment. He keeps doing it, right? And his figures are as good as most people's in this league in terms of his assists and his goals. And some of the goals he scored from those narrow angles, they're absolutely insane. They shouldn't be allowed. Nick Pope, very nice man. Quite a good goalie. I've always been concerned about his distribution and his dyslexia again, left-hand side. It seems to be a bit weak. And the fact we've now got Aaron Ramsdale, or Ramsbottom, as I insisted on calling him the other day, Aaron Ramsbottom. He, again, a good addition. I think he's a good player. And what you need is players who are good with their feet. and have got, and can distribute the ball properly. Whereas it's that distribution that's a bit wrong. He just, don't kick it straight into touch. No, please, bong. No, we don't like that. That it doesn't work with a plan. Right, Kieran Trippier, again, aging player, but very good football brain. He's very good at messing with the opposition. There's a word for it which I won't use because it's a bit rude, but we know what he is. He's very good at messing with the opposition. Sven Botman. Now, there was a guy who used to play for us called Jonathan Woodgate, who was my previous favourite defender, because it's all about positioning. You're reading the opposition's mind and you occupy the space that they want to occupy, and it messes with them. They go, oh, I don't know what to do, and you've got the ball and you're away, right? He's like that. He's got great positional sense. He'll nick the ball off you before you know what's happened, and it's away. Okay, that's a fine art, and I last saw that with Jonathan Woodgate, who did have a slightly unfortunate career when he left Newcastle. Joe Willock, again, I think he's injured. In fact, he's hurt himself, unfortunately. I think he's injured, which is a bit of a disappointment. Fabian Schär used to be my favourite player. I wish he'd spell his name in a nice, logical way. Again, great distribution. The days when you used to see defenders throwing themselves on the ground all the time have long gone. You don't, once you're on the ground, you're pushing your luck. I don't mind latch, ditch, kick it out the net type stuff, but defenders that hurl themselves at the ground. Unfortunately, Schär's got a foul in him. He can't resist doing something naughty every game, and he's pretty much guaranteed to have a breakdown at some point. He'll be down on the ground grasping something. And he's one of those players who's gradually turning into a mummy where you end up wrapped entirely, swathed in bandages. Right, Miley. Yes, I'm quite keen on Miley. I think when I saw him play last season, he's got everything. He's got all the things. The only thing missing was the weighted pass. The top class passers not only get it to the person, they get it into their stride. They've got it's literally on the right foot at the right time in their stride pattern when they receive the ball. Miley was just lacking that little bit of weight, the perfection of weight to his pass. And that's the thing that people forget about pre-season. These guys disappear off and then they come back again and, hey, I'd forgotten how good he was, right? No, he's got better, right? That's what happens. These guys get better. That's the hope. Martin de Gravka, I don't know. I like the guy. He's a tremendous servant to the club. I'm rather old-fashioned. I want players to stay forever and become coaches and hang around and just hang out with the guys for a while, mate. Jamal Lascelles is again. It turned out to be a good captain. It's a shame about his injury record. I mean, he's had no luck at all with that. And I remember Jamal Lascelles being bought as a young prospect. He was, when he was bought, he's one for the future. And he's done all right. I don't know about Sean Neve. I know about Mac Targett. I think he's a good player, a good crosser of the ball. He's good cutting in. I think he's got a lot. This cutting in business, again, is a part of our tactical thing where people cut in on the wrong foot and they swap sides and tap on the other one. But it's all very exciting football, which is the important point to make. Emil Kraft. I'm quite a big fan of Kraft, actually. We tend to forget about him, but he's done us no harm. He's been a very good, what we used to call a utility player. You could stick him in almost anywhere on the field and he'd do a reasonable job. John Ruddy, again, I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything of him. And the same with our Greek friend. Mark Gillespie, yes, we're getting into the... I'm trying to think when I last saw Gillespie play. Murphy, I like Alex Murphy, sounds good. And that's more or less it, apart from, just have a quick look who we got here. Alfie Harrison, again, I'm not sure about.
Barnes, maybe? Barnes?
Barnes. Barnes. Yeah, I forgot about Barnes. Yes, Barnes, another good player. Who's, again, I think he's improved a lot. And I think all of these players have potential. And what's interesting is to see, again, tactically, how people respond to us tactically. You see a lot of teams that have been told they need to swap the play, right? You see them swapping the play backward and forward. Unfortunately, no one's told them what to do next, right? And we're good enough at marking space to keep up with them, and we're just waiting for them to try something stupid and lose possession, or one of our defenders is going to step in and take the ball off. And we've seen a tremendous development in terms of the way players work. Defensive mid players, people like Scotty Parker, other famous, would get the ball and do a circle. They do a little sort of pirouette with the ball, and then lay it off somewhere, right? And that was defensive midfielders. Now they've got the ball, turned it and passed it, right? Or run with it, or done something different with it. So that's one of the big changes that I've seen. And the other thing that's noticeable is the general quality of play. We don't lose the ball with a throw-in, right? That is the most cardinal sin, right? You've got possession of the ball, right? You've won back possession of the ball by them breaking the rules, right? And you then give it them back. And under Pardew, it seemed to happen all the time. And the same with corners. We couldn't score from a corner. And you're going, oh no, what's going on? And those basic things have improved enormously in terms of our coaching. And you can see the way they're going wrong with other coaches because they're not employing professional managers. We're going back to the idea I was talking about, 15,000 hours, right? And it's more than just having spent 15,000 hours on it. Eddie Howe has gone out and deliberately learned how to do things. He's done what the scientists do and saying what architects do and what I do as a structural archaeologist. What's wrong? What have I got wrong? Right? Why isn't that working? Right? And I will go away and think, I don't want to know what I've got right. I want to know what I've got wrong. Right? That's the important bit. And it's a strange experience. Any musician will tell you this, or a performer will tell you this. You go on stage and you do your thing, and it all goes swimming and everyone claps. And you don't remember a thing. But you do remember those gigs when someone at the back shouts, "Oh!" Right? Something extremely rude, F off.
Okay.
I once did a gig at a very famous venue called the Wigan Casino, which was a famous northern dance venue. And I did a gig there. And it all went very well. And our people who were there were clapping and saying encore, encore. And this huge voice at the back went, right. And that's the only bit of the gig I can remember. That's the bit you remember, where it all goes wrong. And which is coming back to the point I wanted to make about comedy and comics, is that to go on stage with a band or a group or a performance or a stage play, you're right, there's more than you up there, and you don't know, you can't necessarily get the audience reaction. You go up there with a microphone and go, make your joke, and nobody laughs, right? Everyone knows that nobody's laughed. They know that you know that I know that you know that wasn't funny. And how you react next that takes some bravery, right? And to be honest, I've always appeared with a guitar, right? That's my prop, right? If it all goes wrong, I'll sing a song. So the bravest people I know are comics, right? Sacha Baron Cohen, otherwise known as Borat, okay, is the bravest man alive, right? He is quite extraordinarily brave. The situations he's putting himself into, in terms of standing up, and some of our great leaders have been comics. Right? They are, and because they are brave people. You've got to be brave to be a comic, and you've got to be able to do it. And going back to my comedy and my football, the two things are related. You've got to be able to understand the football to make jokes about it. And there's another point I'm going to make about going back to being dyslexic, right, and not being very good at games, right, and mainly playing rugby because I was a liability on the football field, and I was generally a liability. So I used to be scorer. I would be, when we were playing cricket, I'd be the guy sitting there doing the scoring. When I watch football now, right, and I'm sat here watching the game, I'm writing notes. All the time I write notes down. I can't watch the game without writing notes. Right?
You should be a journalist then.
Yes, it's a bit like that. It's a need. I need to write the notes down. And if you want to know, the rhythm of football is about 2 minutes. There's a sort of stoppage in play about every 2 minutes, right? Because I write the time down. 22 seconds. It's a timestamp when things happened, and that. So I do all that, and in the margins of that, I will put down my observations about so and so's got funny hair this week, or why is he wearing pink boots, which is quite a lot of multitasking going on. But you only get a sense of the game. You really only get a sense of the game if you're there, I think, sometimes. You're actually physically watching it because you can see the whole field and you can watch what other people are doing off camera, right? Because they're all, you can see them concentrating all down, and then suddenly somebody hoofs the ball up towards the opposite corner, and you suddenly notice that our winger's way up there, and you couldn't see him on the telly because the telly wasn't looking there. But when you're at the match, you can see the whole thing.
Jeff, I would like to ask you: is there anything you like to change in the club at the moment? Something missing?
Yeah. A good press officer or something like that. Obviously, the manager is the person who makes all the statements. But we had a nice time when Meander was there and Amanda. They were greatly liked and respected, and we felt that somehow when they're there, we were being looked after in some sort of special way. All right. Personally, for example, the Daily Mail, well-known publication and extremely powerful publication, had a real go at Amanda. And I have never looked at anything by the Daily Mail since. Right? That's it. They're gone. And that's...
even Craig Hope?
If they're writing in the Daily Mail, I don't want to know. This is just a Daily Mail newspaper. More broadly, journalists, I'd rather not know. I'll tell you my security story. When I used to work in security, I went to one of my clients at the time, which was Newcastle United, and I went in and I was talking to my contact in Newcastle United, and I said, "There's something unusual going on here. why are people in New Zealand? What's going on? Why are people making phone calls to New Zealand? And they said, oh, we've got scouts over there, which is unusual. You know, Spain, Italy, all the usual places. But New Zealand was a very unusual place to see scouts. And, there's a teenager we're quite interested in, right? And I never said anything to anybody. It was just, I'd have made that observation. And it was about 6 months ago, I told the story online. That person was Wood. Our big striker, Mr. Wood, who was being tapped up at the age of 14. I was aware of it, and it was more than my job's worth. It was more than my professional integrity is worth to tell anybody I knew that information. And the same thing applies in all businesses and organizations generally. You don't talk you don't talk shop outside, as it were. You do not spill those secrets because they're very important commercially to the operation of your company. Through my work in security, I've been in every prison in Scotland. I've been in all sorts of factories and police stations and all sorts of infrastructure, as well as, Uncle Joe's caravan site and whatever it happens to be, fairly ordinary stuff. And you never divulge professionally what you know. If you're, it's like if you're an architect or whatever your job is as a professional. And part of the problem I have with some of the speculation and the stuff that goes on in the press, it concerns people's medical problems, okay? And the state of mind and all sorts of other things, which should be confidential. It's not a thing we discuss, right? People's medical issues, unless they tell you their medical issues. I'm quite happy to discuss all the bizarre things that are wrong with me. I did very badly out of COVID, and I lost this side. I lost the hearing in this ear, and I was having a terrible battle with gravity, and I kept falling over all the time. And I'm still a little bit unstable and bump into things a bit. And it's an issue that people should be aware of. And more generally, building out into our community spirit as Newcastle United fans and as a group of people, I'm not representing them this evening, but as NUFC Matters, which we both partake in. It's important that we remember we're doing this for charity. Right? We're doing this to help people. We're using our knowledge and experience to try and help people. And it's important, and I've discussed it online, and I'm quite happy to discuss it with you. I don't think we'll discuss it today, is people's mental wellness and their physical wellness. There are various things that to do with men's health, which need discussing occasionally, because we all have little problems that we don't tell the doctor about, right? And perhaps we should tell something about it. And I'm quite prepared because, to be honest, I've had bladder cancer, prostate cancer, and I've lost a kidney, right? As well as having a whole bunch of other operations in my bottom half, as it were. And so I'm quite happy to appear naked in a doctor's office because I'm quite used to it. I have no pride left. Right?
Yeah. All right.
And so again, it's important as a community, in any community of people, that we're honest with each other and discuss that we're having mental problems. Now, I'm going to divulge slightly into alcohol, right? You live in a part of the world where alcohol is somewhat frowned upon and is not widely available. And that's actually a damn good thing, right, in many respects, because it causes depression, domestic violence. It's an addictive substance, and members of my family are equally affected. And luckily, I've not been affected by alcohol personally, but I have members of my family that have, and have required serious remedial work, as it were, to get that sorted. And there's been a long association between football and alcohol, and we've been sponsored by beer people. And the other thing, perhaps the low point of sponsorship for us was Wonga. You remember Wonga? There's two bits of advice: is be very careful about buying shirts with people's names on it as well. I imagine there's a roaring trade in Newcastle United shirts with Isaac's name on the back of them, right? And now not worth a lot. I never get the player's name on it, right? No. And quite honestly, I often buy other people's black and white shirts. Though in the real world, I have way more guitars than I actually have shirts, and I have quite a few shirts. So coming back to this idea of supporting each other and being honest about our medical problems within our community, and supporting each other, and not getting involved in alcohol is a good thing. Though I will say that there is a tradition in Britain of, because the water was not safe to drink, you drank a very weak beer all the time, because at least that way it's been purified in some way. Right? It's not full of little bugs, and you're not going to get cholera or anything else from drinking the water. And that was a fairly standard, and it's the origin of the expression small beer. The expression you say something as being small beers. It's due to the fact everybody drank beer all the time. It sort of numbs you a bit.
Geoff, I would like to ask you if you have a question you want to ask me about Newcastle.
About
in general. Maybe BIF, maybe.
Yes, I was going to say, in your part of the world, have we got much? Because the other thing to remember is a question of scale. And I had a quick think about this. There is approximately 35 million people in Saudi, something like that. And there's approximately, in the northeast of England, in Geordie land, that sort of thing, we're talking maybe 700,000 at a push. Right? There isn't that many of us.
I thought it's more than 1 million.
Well, Geordies, not really. Well, possibly.
No, I mean in general, in the Newcastle city.
700,000, right? Approximately. It's a bit less than 1 million. Whereas London is sort of 8 or 9 million just in London alone, right? So that's an enormous weight down there. There's a couple of other aspects of northern England that are worth bearing in mind that is relevant to our culture and being Geordies, is that traditionally our enemy is the Scottish, right? They would come from the north, and the nicest bit of the country is the south, the southeast, right? Those areas, Kent, Surrey, all the nice bits where the rich people live. And it's true that the climate's better, the soils are better, you're nearer the continent, you can get some nice wine. So our job was to stop the Scots coming down and stealing the stuff from the south. So we were always a fairly heavily militarized society, and our job was to act as a sort of buffer zone to keep the poor people up further north from coming down south and taking their resources. And that was very much our role as a sort of northern buffer zone. And we have a quite complicated history to do with that. There's a well-known historical figure called William the Conqueror, in England, who was William the First, and that's when most people's history starts with William the First. William the Conqueror came over and took over. Up here, he's known as William the Bastard because he came up here and tried to kill everybody. Right? His idea what to do with the troublesome Northerners. Tell you what, we'll kill them all. Right? That's what we'll do.
You were going to ask a question, but you said you have a question in mind. You said.
Did I have a question in mind? Yes. What sort of competition does Newcastle have against other sporting clubs? I mean, compared to, say, Manchester United or Manchester City or the big London clubs, Arsenal, Spurs, what we used to call the big 5, 6, whatever they want to call themselves. Do we have we made much impression because of your involvement, because of Piff's involvement in the club? Has that made any waves in Saudi?
Could you repeat, please?
Are we making ground as supporters? Is the support for the club growing against the other big clubs, the more traditional?
Okay, all right. Well, it's growing, and a lot of people doesn't follow Premier League. They're starting now because Newcastle. But right. But some of the other clubs supporter, they support their team and Newcastle, and some of them they don't want. They just stick to their teams.
Yeah.
But I tried many times to do official supporter club in Saudi Arabia, but I didn't get supported, or because we have issues here in airing the games.
Yes.
Because because Saturday, Sunday it's not vacation; it's working days, and most of the games at daytime. And here in Riyadh, the capital, it's very crowded, very big city. It's very hard to have a place who air the game because most of the coffee shops we have, they will air something with the Saudi football or maybe Manchester City, Liverpool. It's very hard to have TV in public have Newcastle game on unless it's important. It's many issues. But it's as conclusion, the number are increasing, but need work from the club to make official supporters here in Saudi. It will make you engaged with the club, but that's unfortunately not happening. I spoke with Peter Silverstone regarding that. He liked my ideas, and he said he will definitely do something. And now it's 1 year and a half, nothing.
Our friend Mitch was talking about this and his problem with getting Dubai mags off the ground and trying to.
Dubai.
There didn't seem to be a support mechanism available.
Dubai is different. Why? Because they have sport bars.
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday is vacation.
Mm-hmm.
It's different, and there is much more Geordies in Dubai.
Yes. Crawling with Geordies. Yes. Because how is the question I would ask is how is the Saudi league going? Because there seems to be a lot of money being put into that. You've acquired some very interesting talent in terms.
It's funny you ask. They said now they will do kind of PSR here. They will try to do like this similar rules, but it doesn't seem it working. I hate or I don't like, but I understand the fans in Newcastle. They're saying why PIF supporting other clubs against Newcastle. I keep saying every club caring about itself.
Yeah. It's well. The point is that the word I would use is myopic, which means short-sighted. People are not looking at the bigger picture of the growth, the ideas about the new stadium. What I also think is a very positive idea is a sort of zone around the club where you can go and watch a big screen, and there's so you don't actually have to go into the ground. You can still I forgot what they call that zone now, sort of activity zone.
Yeah.
And I that's a great idea, and it increases the capacity and it spreads in. And it's, you've got to remember, it's also good for the traders, the people who supply the food, the beverages, and the whole, infrastructure. It spreads out. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And it will lead to more specialist shops. We've already got a few that specialize in Newcastle memorabilia or football memorabilia, things like that. So it's good for the general growth. And I think the bigger plan that PIF has is exceptional. The idea of sport and leisure, because it was originally trade, okay, and you did a fair business in religion, for want of a better word, and then you had oil, right? And you had huge amounts of money from oil, and you bought and you built yourself some of the nicest palaces imaginable, and you built fantastic leisure facilities. You bought all the nice property you could find in London, or Paris, and all over the world. You invested all that stuff, and there's still the money coming on. And you had to think long term, what are we going to do? And the idea of sports and leisure as being the key economic driver for your development in that part of the world is brilliant. That's the way to go. I think it's a brilliant plan.
You mentioned Amanda and Merdad earlier, which is kind of agree here, but I think this is one of the issues that after takeover, the club were run differently than now. Now PIF doing like work in silence, and they are not expect. They didn't maybe understand how passionate Newcastle with. They must hear something, some kind of comfort message.
Yes.
They want to work in silent, and that's the problem when you said at the beginning of the show. It's without games, it's fire.
Yeah, and I tell people, go and watch another sport. Cricket is a fantastic game. It's one of the best games ever created, and we've just had to.
No offense, but I prefer baseball over cricket.
You're a peasant. Cricket is a very, very interesting game, and historically very interesting. And they've done very well. What cricket's done very well is introduce new technology very effectively. We've faffed around with VAR and all sorts of other things that haven't gone very well. Whereas they've integrated, it's a longer format game anyway. Cricket, you got more time to fill, so you can fit in these breaks to look at the big screen and appeal the decision, and you have all these exciting technical things happening. It's also a huge international game, and it's gone where the money. You think of cricket as being traditionally based at Lords and being all very English, but the money's in India, and that's where it's gone. And the Indian subcontinent is where cricket is really booming, and our players go there to play, rather like Indian players in the past came over to here to play cricket. Our players are now going over there because that's where the market is, and you have to be realistic about where the money is. Right? It's all about it's ultimately about money, and the development of the game development of the club, as you say. We do have this slight issue with communication, and I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what's best.
Agree.
In a sense, because I believe in I don't want to know the internal workings of the club. It's got nothing to do with us. It's strictly business. It's strictly mum's the word. And in a lot of secret organizations, you only know what you need to know. you know, there's no reason for you to know anything about X, Y, and Z because it's none of your damn
That's
business.
hard, tough for us, very tough.
And now, I want to introduce you to something else that while we're rabbiting on, is somebody called C. Northcote Parkinson. He was a civil servant after the war who worked out a very simple idea that's very true. And that is that work expands to meet the time allowed, right? If you give someone 2 weeks to do a job, they will take 2 weeks, right? And if, you know, the project, we've got 10 years to build a stadium. Yeah, it will take 10 years to build a stadium, right? And every little aspect will expand, right? Because you will need to pay for the surveys of this, surveys of that. They've got to be this design and that design, and people have to approve this, and all of that stuff sort of just proliferates and becomes more. You know, it takes up more space.
Geoff, we reach the end of the show.
Yeah, I'll get my watch out, which is my timepiece, which is got.
It was great to
which has got a beautiful bit of chinoiserie, blue and white arabesque design.
This is a Sherlock Holmes style.
Sherlock Holmes, yeah.
Well, Sherlock Holmes,
yeah, well, Sherlock Holmes. I'm a great fan of Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle was a very, very clever man, and the whole idea of the detective novel. Again, I'll start talking about literature now.
I would like to ask you at the end if some kind of maybe message or something you would like to say to the Saudi fans or Arab fans.
Well, I would say
share something, or you want to share something.
The simplest thing is to do. There's a fantastic bit of Eastern philosophy, Taoist philosophy. Those who speak do not know. Those who know do not speak. Right? That's very good advice. And what I would say to anybody who's not familiar with the club is trust the process. Trust Eddie Howe. Right? There is the key person in this equation is Eddie Howe. Right? He is the man. He has put the hours in. He is the man who has gone out and said, I'm getting this wrong. What can I do to make it better? Right? That's the way you work out. That's how engineers work. That's how scientists work. It's how all the good geniuses work, is they're looking for mistakes. I want to know what I've got wrong. And then I'll find something, and then I'll fix it. And if that doesn't work, I'll find something else. I will keep improving. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better.
Thank you جيفري. طبعا كان معنا جيفري كارتر من نيوكاسل. كان حديث ممتع صراحة، وتكلمنا عن أشياء كثيرة يعني، لكن حاولنا يمكن كان القسم تقريبا الحلقة كانت عن قسمين. القسم الأول تكلمنا عن أمور كثيرة ورانا إياها كهوايات، كفخر الصناعة نيوكاسلية والإنجليزية كما ذكر جيفري كارتر. بعدين عاد تكلمنا برضو في الأمور اللي تخص نيوكاسل. حلقة ممتعة. We really enjoy this show. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.